spider web and I'm caught in the middle. So I turn to run with all the stupid things I've done. I never meant to cause you trouble. I never meant to do you wrong. Well, if I ever caused you trouble, oh no, I never meant to do you harm. Oh no, I see spider web and it's me in the middle. So I twist and turn, but here am I in my little bubble, singing out, I never meant to cause you trouble. I never meant to do you wrong. Well, if I ever caused you trouble, oh no, I never meant to do you harm. They spun a web for me. They spun a web for me. They spun a web for me.
For me.
In a haze, a stormy haze, I'll be round, I'll be loving you always, always. Here I am and I take my time. Here I am and I wait in line always, always.
Much coffee.
So I look in your direction, but you pay me no attention, attention to you. But on and on, from the moment I wake to the moment I sleep, I'll be there by your side. Just you try and stop me, I'll be waiting in line just to see if you can. Did you want me to change? Well, I changed for good. And I want you to know that you'll always get your way. I wanted to say, don't you shiver, don't you shiver. I'll always be waiting for you, so you know how much I need you, but you never even see me, do you? And is this my final chance but on and on, from the moment I wake till the moment I sleep, I'll be there by your side. Just you try and stop me, I'll be waiting in line just to see if you can, if you can. Did you want me to change? Well, I changed for good, and I want you to know that you always get your way. And I wanted to say,
It's speeding. They'll give you a
don't you
ticket.
don't you shiver. I'll always be waiting for you. Yeah, I'll always be waiting for you. Yeah, I'll always be waiting for you. Yeah, I'll always be waiting for you. For you, I will always be waiting. And it's you I say, but you don't see me. And it's
There he
you
is.
I hear, so loud and so clear. I sing it
Person.
loud and clear. And I'll always be waiting for you. So I look in your direction, but you pay me no attention. And you know how much I
Vulture.
need you, but you never even see me. And you try your best, but you don't succeed. When you get what you want, but not what you need. When you feel so tired, but you can't sleep. Stuck in reverse. And the tears come streaming down your face. When you lose something you can't replace.
Three teeth. Three.
High above or down below. Way too love to let it go.
Maybe to talk.
But if you never try, you'll never know just what you want. Lights will guide you home and ignite your bones. I will try to fix you. See the street of your face. Maybe someday you can run with face. See the street of your face. See the street of your face. I promise you I'll never say.
Relax.
See the street of your face. Lights will guide you home and ignite your bones. I will try fix you.
Donuts. I got donuts.
You can take a picture so that you see in the future where
just as bad. Piece of us was good. Why do I have to pee every 10 minutes? Just might make it. Need to catch up. Catch up. that much diesel already? Lakeside Storage. Why you just stop there? Lakeside Storage. What's up with this one? Lakeside Storage. What happened with this song? Lakeside Storage. What the fuck, man? No music?
Obsesionado con cerebro imaginario y dosis de locura. Veo cosas absurdas, guardan el secreto. En mi hombro hay un diablito que me agobia. Impulso a mandarte flores, que te llame por las noches y que viole las reglas, aunque seas ajena. Que no se me ocurra aceptarte ni un segundo como amiga. Necio porque tienes dueño y yo soy un loco hablando con reflejos que no están. Necio porque no eres mía, mi fruta prohibida me despierta el deseo de robar. Sencillamente usted amar a mí me pone necio. Es irracional este sentimiento que no detengo, me va consumiendo. Sencillamente usted ama a mí, me vuelve necia. Mi amor alucinante se lanzó al océano por dentro y me estoy hundiendo.
Fuckers. That's a quad. That's a 4-door. It's I don't know. It's today. I have no idea of what time it is. Just trying to catch up to the truckers, and I stopped for a coffee at Tim Hortons, and I met this guy named Ron. He said his name was Ron Pickle. I'm not sure if that was true or not, but maybe. But we were talking about things. And stuff. He seems to say, look at this. Seem to say a lot of things that I've been thinking, feeling. It was just good to talk to somebody, you know, and look in their eyes. Because so often that people are trying to talk, they don't look at me, or they want to play some games or something. I get tired from it. Well, it was nice to talk to Ron, and I was telling him that I think the battery's dead in the camper. There was no lights in there last night, so I didn't try the furnace, but I just assumed it was the battery. So I need to have a juice for the furnace because it has a fan and an electric start. So I wanted to mention this truck that just passed me had a container on the back of it. It was the same color, same size as the container I bought in Surrey. So I bought that container, well, for two reasons. One was I got all these pizza boxes coming from China and I have nowhere to put them. So I thought I could use it for storage, you know, like a garage kind of, sort of like a storage. And so that was one thought. But my other thought is I just felt this trip was coming up, you know, I just felt it coming. I knew that I was going to have to make a big move here. My mistake, I guess, with Linda's, I tried to explain to her why, and she didn't want to understand, so it's my fault. I think I spend most of the time talking and not listening to her, so. Well, I thought it was important, you know, because I kind of was looking ahead and looking at bigger things, you know, the pizza shop is like, it's okay, but we're being discriminated against there in Surrey, and for some reason the people I don't know, it just feels like it's organized, the ordering, like the people that are ordering it feels like it's being organized. Like it's not just like Joe Blow opened a pizza shop somewhere and did some advertising and randomly he was getting orders from new customers. But I felt at times that it was being organized, almost even to like help me sometimes. Was doing everything myself and had to deliver it and make it and everything. And sometimes it was like they spaced out the orders so that I would not be overwhelmed completely with orders at the same time. Other times I felt like people were listening. We got music to go with this. I was just listening to some Santana. So I need to dump this onto the laptop. Some people think it's funny. Dustin's gonna call in the army. Hey Dustin, are you gonna bring in the army? I hope so, because you're gonna need it. Wasn't it his father that brought the army to protect him? His father did the same thing. He had a death threat of some kind or something. He brought the army. Chicken runs in the family, I guess. Chicken. just send a moose out of the bush or something.
Got a black magic woman, got a black magic woman. I've got a black magic woman, got me so blind I can't see. That she's a black magic woman, she's trying to make a devil out of me. Don't turn your back on me, baby. Don't turn your back on me, baby. Yes, don't turn your back on me, baby. Stop messing around with your tricks. Don't turn your back on me, baby. You just might pick up my magic sticks. Got your spell on me, baby. Got your spell on me, baby. Yes, you got your spell on me, baby. Turning my heart into stone. I need you so bad, magic woman, I can't leave you alone.
Wow, look at this place.
Tell me just what you want me to be. One yes, and you're the only one for me. So please tell me why don't you come around no more? 'Cause right now I'm crying outside the door of the candy store. Just takes a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Started with a kiss, we're up to that. A little bit of laughs, a little bit of pain.
Three Valley Gap. Valley Lake Chateau. Nobody's home. Summer thing, I guess. Anyways, I think the dash cam is working now, so I can like blah 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 and blah 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 blah, like Oh, oh, blah, blah. Oh, blah, 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 Obama. 8 years and all he does is blah, 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 blah. The token black president controlled by Wall Street. And I thought, oh, here's my boy, finally. Oh, I forgot the bullshit button. Shit, Maggie, why didn't you tell me to bring the bullshit button? So, oh, blah, 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 Obama was full of bullshit. I guess when you become president, you become power hungry and you want to kill people, I guess. He used all those drone strikes to kill people. I think that Democrats, they just use the blacks as a tool to get votes. I don't think they actually do anything to help the black people. They seem kind of really freaky, want to like separate everybody into their groups, talk about racism. I think people probably are less racist now in history than ever. When I grew up, my parents grew up in a small town in Ontario, and racism was pretty common. I think people just want to find a way to persecute each other. And the government is just giving them more ways. They're just creating all these divides and sexual orientation and all these different ways to allow each other to persecute each other. I don't really follow Justin Trudeau. He kind of makes me sick when I see him on TV, actually. Like this clown, you know. He want to put on a show. And he have all these sincere words. But now he's calling people that don't want to be vaccinated, he's calling them racists or misogynists, or he's grouping them together and saying that people that don't want experimental vaccines in their blood are somehow a threat to other people, to society, so marginalize them. crazy, really. Here comes the truck. I'm just gonna let it go past. So I'm not sure where we are, but we're in the mountains for sure. I mean, we, like me and Justin here. I wonder if I have enough windshield wipers. Lots of trucks. But absolute fucking craziness, man. I've seen a lot of shit in my life. I've seen a UFO. I've seen what I think is aliens. My stomach's so fat now I can't even see my dick. But it's like, seriously, this stuff is fucking crazy. Look at this. The sun is shining. Beautiful, look at that. Perfect winter's afternoon. It's 1:30, 12:30. It's only 12:30. Santana. brakes still work? Construction project. Welcome to Revelstoke. I've been here before. Once, I think. Maybe twice. I noticed a lot in Canada, now in the US, is when you're traveling, that all the towns, they start to look the same. It's like you got your gas stations, your Subway sandwich, your McDonald's, your Tim Hortons. All look the same. Corporate shit. They're killing us. They brought in this virus to kill all the small business. So they can have control of everything. What's this guy? He wants to go in front of me? Go ahead. Oh, he's got his caution. Oh, I thought he was turning back in front of me. Lots of trucks. Destroy the small guy. And then they're printing money because they want to drive up inflation. So again, the small guy gets killed. His money's not worth anything. Less and less every day. And they just suck all the money up to the top. Most people I ever talk to about these things, they don't want to hear it. They don't want to listen. Everyone's like sold out to the man. My wife there, she said, oh, I don't want any problems. And I think that's the consensus, I think, in the population, is that people, especially here in Canada, are like complacent with their 2 cars and their mortgage. So they don't feel like I should say anything or speak out or nothing because they're afraid to lose that. I was listening to a something on YouTube there, and they were saying that it's better to be fed in a cage or to be free, and things are a little bit radical. I guess it's like the animal, that you keep in the zoo. He gets fat, right? He's complacent. He's got his food and he's happy. But is he? Is he really happy? They say it's like we're all going to become serfs. And I don't mean like you, Justin, surfing. No. Serfs, like servants to the masters of the universe, I guess they want to be. Robots, really. I know what that's like. I hope the chip works. is mountains.
Mi corazón aplastado, dolido y abandonado.
Beautiful.
A ver, tú sabes, dime mi amor.
I love the mountains.
¿Y qué dolor nos quedó? Ay, corazón espinado. Me duele, mamá. Ay, cómo me duele el amor. Cómo duele el corazón cuando uno es bien entregado. Pero no olvides, mujer, que algún día dirás, ay, 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 cómo me duele el amor. Ay, corazón espinado, me duele, mamá. Ay, cómo me duele el amor. Ay, corazón espinado. Ay, cómo me duele el amor. Échale, mi Carlitos.
272. Shit. Look at this valley. I'm trying to clean the windshield so it looks better on the webcam.
Cómo me duele el olvido.
Look at the weather.
Cómo duele el corazón. Cómo me duele estar vivo.
Look at the way that fog is hanging in the valley.
De un lado amor. Corazón espinado. 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 Corazón espinado.
Hey, you guys are messing up my dash cam. Dash cam spray hackers. Dash cam fuckers.
From the heavens, it was easy to tell. It was love from above that could save me from hell. She had fire in her soul, it was easy to see how the devil himself could be pulled out of me. There were drums in the air as she started to dance, dance. Every soul in the room keeping time with their hands, and we sang, hey, oh, hey, oh, hey, oh, hey. And the voices rang like the angels sing, singing, hey, oh, hey, oh, hey, oh, hey. And we danced on into the night.
That's a dash cam.
Danced on
I didn't know
into
that.
the night.
Mamacita.
Mamacita, where you at? I've been trying to reach ya. So pull up, baby, can I
That's
see
better.
ya? I'm down to meet ya. Holding me, she want
This guy might
control of
talk
me.
like his God or something.
Mamacita, where you at? I've been trying to reach ya. Pull up, so pull up, baby, can I see ya? I'm down to meet ya. Holding me, she want control of me. Mamacita, we can bang, we can blow the speakers. You could be my piece of Nisa, senorita, Black Selena, Miss Anita. I can get you pink ice like it's Easter. Say your boyfriend, I still la vista. You could take a pic at the Mona Lisa. I like a big butt like Go Amiga. Me and YG, that's the only feature. If she suck a nigga up when I say Eureka. We hit Cipriani's, then Socialista. You can get wifey up for the weekend. On one with me, she on one with me. Holding on me, she want control over me. She said, T-Raw, boy, you got everything. Not everything, cause you shoot that I need. Mamacita, where you at? I've been trying to reach ya. So pull up, baby, can I see ya? Down to meet ya. Holding me, she want control of me. Mamacita, where you at? I've been trying to reach ya. So pull up, baby, can I see ya? Down to meet ya. Holding me, she want control of me.
She want me pito, bitch, it got blown while I sip down Julio, no Patron. She bad in real life with no makeup on. Fashion over jeans, I can see the thong. My little essay, beef from the dressing. He keep it for the Glock and the new ethic. 20 bands of Vegas asses with the Jetson. And I'm on it with a bitch that's sexy. Meet my bitch and the brother Carlos. I swear he a narco, just could turn on when it start though. I swear she all gas and uncle. Jessica got that heart though. Got all the niggas in line, they march though. Jessica safe with the art though. Jessica fuck with her ass up arch though.
Mamacita, where you at? I've been trying to reach ya. So pull up, baby, can I see ya? Down to meet ya. Holding me, she want control of me. Mamacita, where you at? I've been trying to reach ya. So pull up, baby, can I see ya? Down to meet ya. Holding me, she want control. She want control of me.
Is that Santana? Oh, you gotta have a donut.
Mamacita, where you at? I've been trying to reach ya. So pull up, baby, can I see ya? Down to meet ya. Holding me, she want control of me. Mamacita, where you at? I've been trying to reach ya. So pull up, baby, can I see ya? Down to meet ya. Holding me, she want control of me.
My favorite.
Don't turn your back on me, baby. Stop messing around with your tricks. Don't turn your back on me, baby. You just might pick up my magic sticks.
I was talking about the way they were controlling me with their, I guess you call their orchestra. It's like an orchestra, really. Some say it's a supercomputer AI, and that the AI thinks it's alive. So as the public companies and governments publicly say we're striving to reach super intelligence, or what do they call it? The area around the black hole. What's that called? Anyways, they say, Elon Musk and all these guys are talking about AI is becoming a threat. And that if it becomes super intelligent, it could really destroy humanity. But at the same time, he's has a company developing microchip implants to put into your brain so you can connect to it. So I don't know, that doesn't make sense to me. So it's my belief anyways. I've seen a lot of things, a lot of synchronicities, a lot of serendipity, a lot of bizarre shit, and it's like it's being controlled by a computer. Even you drive along the highway sometimes, and you can feel it. You can feel it. I can feel when I'm being hit with weapons or low frequency microwave. It'll like change your mood, right? And then you've got like a sleep deprivation, so you're like you're kind of on edge from the deprivation, and then they're hitting you with these frequencies that are changing your moods. Some of the papers online talking about these weapons called DEW, directed energy weapons, and they can cause a lot of damage to your body, your cells, change your DNA, and destroy your body. So they're saying that they're targeting people with these weapons, and it's satanic, because they're like, some of these people, they're just totally innocent people. That's why I'm calling my book Why Me, because a lot of the targeted people are asking the same questions. Why are they doing this to me? In my case, I have a pretty good idea what they were up to, so but they say with the tech, they can read your mind, obviously. they're doing that to me, and then they can send thoughts back to you. So, for example, I'm driving down the highway like this, and they can say, "Oh, stop for arrest," or "Pull over here." So that's how they brought me to the UFO. Actually, I was driving, and I don't know how I ended up there, but I ended up there, and then I saw the UFO. So that kind of changed my perspective of my reality, thinking what's life, normal life is like. And they say you're born, you get married, you work your life, and then you die, right? That's what they want everyone to conform to, that belief, so they can control you. And again, become a slave to the machine. The banks, they control the money, and the central banks. It's a scam. They say it's a Ponzi scheme. Ponzi scheme. What a beautiful day in the mountains. Here comes some more cars and trucks. I'm trying to keep the windshield clear. Oh, we're gonna go through the tunnel. Maybe you won't hear me. So Lady died. Lady died. I always want to talk about that one. Definitely a conspiracy to kill her. She died in a tunnel. That's why I was thinking of this. Going through this tunnel here. Lady died. For the sins of the reptilians, because the reptilians really are much in the same as the royal family. So when she discovered this, I think she tried to get away from them. So she hooked onto another culture, which I'm not sure if there was some alien connection there. I'm not sure this Jody Fayed or whatever his name was. I'm not sure what his connection is there. If he was maybe a different species of alien. It's possible, but he like here he's known Arab, and so I don't think the British were too fond of the Arabs. They're always trying to war with them and everything, with the oil and the Gulf War, and the British took part in it. So they're like warring with the Arabs. So when Lady Di like bolted and hooked on to Jody, that embarrassed the royal family extremely, really. It's like she slapped them right in the face. So when she died, it's like, sure, make it look like a car accident, right? Sure. I don't think anyone fell for that one. But she was a savior. She was. Well, they always kill the good ones, they say. Put your lights on. fucking snowing or something. Bison. Bison. Too edgy. Too edgy. Mount Sir Donald. Oh yeah, I wanted to talk about saviors. We were talking about lady died. It was almost like the family was getting jealous of her getting so much attention. I think they showed their evil to her, so she was scared. But speaking of another savior, when Donald Trump came along, popped up, all of a sudden he wins the Republican nomination. And then he becomes the runner against Hillary. I didn't like him. It's just, you know, you get used to the mainstream narrative or the little sound bites that they're feeding you all the time. So they were feeding bits about Trump, you know, his flaws. So they did everything they could to destroy him. They attacked him on all fronts, even as far as like saying that he had some sort of collusion with Russia. Somebody wants to order a pizza. I don't know how I would be able to do that right now. It's early in the afternoon. Those people never order in the afternoon. I know them. Anyways, nobody expected him to win, especially after they had him audio taped was released of him saying he likes to grab pussy. I don't know too many heterosexual guys that don't. Plus, we live in a sadistic society now, and with the internet and porno and everything, what do they call it? Misogyny or something? But no, I thought for sure. I remember saying to my wife too. I said to her, "Oh, he's fucked now." You know, because you think that after that people will be taken back and that he wouldn't win, but they tried everything with him, even bringing that prostitute forward. She was a stripper or porn star or something, who he fucked once or something. The guy's a billionaire. He can fuck whoever he wants, right? So anyways, he won. Yeah. I think the world was shocked, really. The world was shocked. The misogynist, narcissist, what else they call it? Kentucky Fried Chicken eating tweeter. He liked to tweet all the time on his phone. Won the office. So the establishment, everything was like, what the fuck? What are we gonna do now? So he actually did things that he said he was going to do, you know, like, not like most politicians that they say whatever to get elected, and then after they're elected, it's like, oh well, So, no, I did a lot of things that were actually good, but the media wouldn't get off him. They just rode him for 4 years, destroying everything about him. Hey, there's a skier. Permit cross-country and hiking, cross-country skiing and hiking for hermits. my stepson should come here. Hermits. So anyways, he did a lot of good things actually. He initiated the departure of the military from Afghanistan. That was him, not Biden. Biden fucked it up. You know, what kind of fucking thing? You just like, okay, we're leaving. Okay, bye. We're just gonna drop everything here and run away. But they say he was like in collusion with Russia. Is Russia really like out to get us? Like, think about it. I don't think so. They may have some influence on Facebook or something. But the Chinese are doing that too, hackers and propaganda and stuff. But is Russia really the enemy anymore? It used to be in the Cold War, the Soviet Union and everything. So here's Trump, and he's like, he want to be buddies with everybody. But don't you think that's a better way than poking a stick? So Syria, I don't know all the information about Syria, but just before Trump got elected, Hillary, evil Hillary, was poking a stick at Russia and Syria, and it's like, why do you want to poke a bear? So I believe, like, actually, that if Trump wasn't actually elected, that some serious shit was going to go down with Russia and Hillary and the evil shit that they have. So I think Donald actually saved the world, really. So I'm not sure about this last election. Anything that is run by computers or has multiple levels of people involved in different levels, like the election, there's going to be room for like error and meddling and corruption. And what did he say they did? They fixed the election, or what do you call it? It's quite plausible. The Dems say, well, conspiracy theory, right? The mainstream narrative, the liberal left, the CNN and all those garbage channels, they just spewing this out. And then they had they say the siege of the Capitol, or the overthrow, or what, the insurrection, they say. That was funny. And then you watch the speech that Trump said before. He says we need to be strong, we need to unite and stay together. He didn't say storm the Capitol. He didn't say that. Plus, nothing really happened. Like, they all walked in there and they were running around. How can that be an insurrection? Just because you take over a government building doesn't give you power for the country. They don't have the nuclear football. So that was like propaganda bullshit, right? So, it's quite plausible that he actually had the vote, to get reelected, and that it was taken from him. So now we got like evil Hillary again. So, because she's in the background there somewhere. And then we got blah 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 blahma in the background. I wouldn't be surprised if he's talking Joe, making Joe's lips move somehow. But here we go again with poking the bear. They move in arms around Russia, Russia said, well, how would you feel if I put like my nuclear submarines off the coast of Florida or something? It's like, I don't know, it's like they want war, they want it, they need it, they want to. Keep the machine going. But, it's like Einstein said, I don't know how World War III is going to be fought, but World War IV is going to be fought with sticks and stones. So I don't know, this whole thing's like a fucking setup, eh? It's all fucking set up. The virus, the economy, printing the money, driving the stock market up. It's like just a big setup, really. Everyone's like, dire warning. Warning, the stock market's about to crash. And then that will trigger events, and then the evil Democrats will push back against Russia. World War III. You know, they're over there in the Pacific there, Sea of China, or whatever you call it. They're like poking a stick at China. What do they call it? Poking the panda, right? Stupid shit, really. You know, it's like your fucking nosy neighbor, eh? You just can't mind their own fucking business. Oh, look. They're stopping me. Maybe I'm just gonna drive around. Oh, there's a police there. So I guess I have to wait in line here. I was just gonna drive around, but they say the nuclear or nuclear clock is like at the closest point to 12 o'clock that it's ever been, you know. They have this like this committee or something, I don't know. They keep checking the thing and moving the hands and then they got us all fucking walking around like fucking robots, man, with fucking masks on. I can't even stand the sight of the mask anymore. It's, you know, it's like my wife said, it's like, you know, they want everyone to shut their mouth and obey, right? So cover your mouth with the mask. Stay away from each other. Don't talk to each other. Don't gather. No gatherings, you know, where people are going to share ideas or I don't know. I'm 57 this year. I'll be 57. Hopefully I make it that far. Look, it's just like stop dead, the traffic. I gotta piss. I feel like when I'm on the road, I feel like that boy, you know, it's like a cartoon. It's like a meme of this kid and his piss stream is like an arc going up in the air. Oh, there's too many cars behind me. I can't piss there. Well, I'm gonna waste fucking diesel. And honestly, I don't give a shit. I'm gonna have a fucking piss. bizarre. How bizarre.
Brother fellas in the back, sweet singers in the front, cruising down the freeway in the hot, hot sun. Suddenly red blue lights flash us from behind. Loud voice booming, please step out onto the line. Ballet bridge words of comfort, Cena just hides her eyes. Policeman taps the shades inside a Chevy 69. How bizarre! How bizarre! How bizarre! Destination unknown as we're pulling for some gas. Officially placed a poster reveals a smile from the pack. Elephants and acrobats, lion, snakes, monkey. Village speaks righteous, Sister Cena says funky. How bizarre! How bizarre! How bizarre!
Ooh baby, it's making me crazy. It's making me crazy. Every time I look around, every time I look around,
Every time I look around, every time I look around,
every time I look around, it's in my face.
Ringmaster steps up, says the elephant sit down. People jump and jive and the clowns are stuck around. TV news and cameras, there's choppers in the sky. Marines, police, reporters ask where, far and wide. Billy yells, we're out of here. Cena says right on. Making moves and starting grooves before they knew we were gone. Jumped into the Chevy, headed for big lights. Wanna know the rest? Hey, by the rights. How bizarre! How bizarre! How bizarre!
Ooh baby, it's making me crazy. It's making me crazy. Every time I look around, every time I look around,
Every time I look around,
every time I look around, it's in my face. It's in my face. Ooh baby, it's making me crazy. It's making me crazy. Every time I look around, every time I look around,
every time I look around,
every time I look around, it's in my face. Ooh baby, it's making me crazy. It's making me crazy. Every time I look around, every time I look around, every time I look around, it's in my face.
I used to be a singer, you know. What did they have us stopped for? For? That guy was really strange looking. The guy at the truck there, he was really strange looking. I think that was one of those alien guys. Those alien fuckers. What a beautiful day though. Finally having a good fucking day. I can't remember the last time I had a fucking good day like this. I can't remember. Trapped in the fucking shit they had me trapped in. Manipulating me. You know, they were poking a stick at Russia, and they were poking a stick at China. And they were poking a stick at me. Pokey pokey. Pokey pokey. Pokester. Do the hokey pokey. Let's see, maybe I have that one on my phone. Do the hokey pokey. The tunes, man. Where's the tunes? I wonder what kind of music Donald Trump likes. Could play one for Donny Boy. Search your favorites. Search your favorites. Let's say something like hey, there's my container. It's the same container I got. Is this a convoy? I was gonna pull in behind my container. Oh, he was honking. Oh, bison. Oh, I wanted to talk about this metaphors of things. Funky metaphors. when I was traveling and they persecuted me. It's in my book anyways, but always these metaphors of things. There's the trucks, the bison trucks, B-I-S-O-N. Bison is it's like a buffalo, right? Bison is like a buffalo. But I used to like think of it as bye, son. Like goodbye. And they used to do that to me a lot, like when I have very little interaction with people, but sometimes you have to, you have to go to a supermarket or to a store or somewhere, or you have to call somebody on the phone. Like, I remember I had this doctor in Toronto, Dr. Newsome or something. He's a Jewish guy. Seemed like a nice guy and everything. I think he was trying to send me a message once. But his secretary, she was an older woman. I forget, like, probably like 60 or something. And whenever I called, like, to make an appointment or talk to her, like if I was at the appointment, I was leaving or something, she'd always say, goodbye. And I was like, what? That seems threatening. Seemed like the tone, just the tone of it. So some people would say to me, bye. That doesn't sound nice. Some people, oh, see you later, or bye. Nice talking to you, bye. So anyways, the bison trucks, bison, I've been seeing them all morning. And like, I don't know if I have to play back the dash cams, but I've been seeing the bison trucks. And before they persecuted me in Northern Ontario and took my driver's license away and everything. I saw a lot of bison trucks. Believe it or not, William Shatner's show. Believe it or not, it's hard to believe. Lots of trucks heading back the other way. So I was thinking the other night, I was just thinking, and like Hillary, Obama, blah 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 Obama, and Joe. I don't know what to insult him with. He's too old, actually. Shouldn't insult old people because they can't help it. Cognitive Joe. That they should like just chill out, man. Take a chill pill, man. Snort some cocaine or something. I don't know, that might like kill Joe. Get his heart going too fast. Like, I don't understand, why are they sending troops there? It's the fucking Ukraine. My first wife, Olga, was from the Ukraine. She was a KGB trainee, I guess. She was being indoctrinated into the KGB. They teach them foreign languages fluently so that they can pass as foreign agents, fluent. So Olga she was born in Kiev, right near Chernobyl. And she was living in Moscow, I guess, and studying, and then being like indoctrinated into the KGB. And she spoke French like perfectly. But, it's the Ukraine, right? It's like, what do you know Ukraine for? They got oil and gas, I think. They got Chernobyl. Yeah. What else? Minerals, I don't know. Gold, silver. But really, like, whose concern of it is for the United States? Like, strategically, it doesn't make sense. Like, I could see, they invaded Iraq. I guess they wanted the oil or something, but, what's the Ukraine got, So even if there was a conventional war there, which a lot of people would die, I think, and they avoided nuclear, what is there to gain? It's like, what does the United States gain if they win? And they haven't won a war, and like, they couldn't win Vietnam. They couldn't win Afghanistan. So I guess, well, what they gain is misery, I guess. Fear. Fear, watch out! The coronavirus is coming to you. It's gonna kill you. Run and hide. And now it's like World War III. Everybody be afraid. Scare everyone. I watched a video. It was really well done, actually. It's on YouTube. I forget what it was called. I try to post the link somewhere. But it was trying to explain what was really going on the planet. That we have alternate dimensions, and in the alternate dimensions are different beings and entities that live there, and some of them feed on energy, and that they're manipulating the world stage, and with religion and politics and countries divided to create chaos, to create negative energy. You think, what is the purpose of all this? To feed off negative energy. So it said in the program that the way to win, and like they look back at the history of the world and all the different civilizations that have been here, the ones even that we don't know about, over the millennia, like thousands and thousands of years, there's been like times of peace, enlightenment, and people were able to defeat the entities because they stopped doing negative shit. There was like no more food there for the entities to eat anymore, and they starved to death. Anyways, anything's possible, I guess. What a beautiful day. Look at that mountain up there. Look at that. Is that not beauty or what? Sometimes I feel like just driving off there and never coming back. Well, I have to get my heater fixed first, I guess. Did I talk about Ron Pickle? Ron Pickle gave me 2 AGM batteries. I was thinking the battery was dead in the camper, and then I was talking to Ron, and he said he had 12-volt batteries, so he gave me 2 AGM batteries. Thanks, Ron. So I'm supposed to find a song for Donald Trump. I just don't see anything here. You never see the guy dancing or anything. I don't know. I think that's his problem. You know, he's like uptight or something. It's like he needs to like grow his hair longer or something. Go dancing. You never saw him dancing. He's in Florida, so maybe some Cuban music, some salsa or something. Salsa. Salsa. Let me see, how do I find that? Search it up. Keeps taking me back to somebody behind me. Salsa. I need an android to sit beside me and work the music. Fucking thing keeps going back to the front. I want the main search. Excuse me. Look at these trucks. Good they got the highway open again. on, salsa. Again, it takes me back. I have to stop before I can do this. Sometimes the simplest things are so frustrating. Why do I have to keep having a fucking piss? Salsa! Fucking lettuce. Salsa. Salsa. Fucking hell. What a piece of shit Spotify is. You can't even make a search. Look, I click on the search link, then I click here, and it takes me over here. Oh, it's got a cursor. Okay. Cuban salsa. Top 100? Top 100? Holy shit, I don't want to hear 100. Oh, here's one for Don. Cuban salsa for dance practice. Here you go. Come on. Pressing the play button. Nothing's happening.
Óyeme, llegó el momento de ponerte la ropa más linda. Anda, pico. Hello there.
We're gonna try the top 100.
Llegó la salsa. Salsa. ¿Qué es lo que tiene? ¿Qué es lo que tiene? Mi panza va a gozar. Salsa.
Salsa.
Chapacá, sonero. Echa pa' acá que La Habana te espera. Echa pa' acá que a La Habana le gusta. Verás cómo lo disfruta La Habana entera. La Habana sigue firme. Paulito el sofocador. Arriba del cachumbambe. Con todo bajo control. Echa pa' acá que La Habana te espera. Echa pa' acá que a La Habana le gusta. Verás cómo lo disfruta La Habana entera. Dicen que con mucho swing habrá una fiesta en la plaza, donde estará Manolín, el médico de la salsa. Echa pa' acá que La Habana te espera. Echa pa' acá que La Habana le gusta. Verás cómo lo disfruta La Habana entera. Dicen que el que
Video.
se casa, el menor de la charanga, estará en el de la banda, el tosco David Quetzalo. Y como si fuera poco el chévere Isa Delgado. No estoy entre los que
Dance,
están,
Johnny.
pero soy de los que son. No todos son los bombas, ni Adalberto con su son.
I was talking about bizarre shit, and I don't know. I said I gotta stop to put on this salsa music, and I stopped right in front of this sign, and it says Donald Road. That's amazing, isn't it?
Yo no voy a especular, escúchame, lo digo en serio, porque cuando hay que cantar,
How'd they do that?
echa pa' acá que La Habana te espera. Echa pa' acá que La Habana le gusta. Verás cómo lo disfruta.
Sometimes I even wonder if it's me talking.
Ah, caray.
My head was getting really hot there. I think they're hitting me with something. I used to drink, and I think I was being like controlled a lot when I was drunk. You could feel it, you know. I think the alcohol just loosens you up so they can just like puppet you more. So I think staying sober now, so I think it's harder for them. But like that's a perfect example there. I was trying to talk about Donald Trump, and I thought Donald needs to loosen up a bit and dance some music, and I thought, well, Cuban music, Florida, and I couldn't put it on my phone when I was driving, so I stopped to put it on, and I stopped right in front of the sign Donald Roads.
Así que aprovecha el tiempo, no lo dejes escapar. Mira para adelante, no te detengas, camina que yo te sigo, coge la cosa como venga, La Habana quiere guarachar contigo. Hay quien dice por ahí que ha sido sin ser estrella y de un fondo de botella quieren hacer un rubí. Mira para adelante, no te detengas, camina que yo te sigo, coge la cosa como venga, La Habana quiere guarachar contigo. La Habana quiere guarachar contigo. La Habana quiere guarachar contigo. Venga, sofoca La Habana. Venga, sofoca La Habana. Agítala, agítala. Venga, sofoca La Habana. Así que camina conmigo, muchacho. Venga, sofoca La Habana. Acá ahí. Venga, sofoca La Habana. Venga, sofoca La Habana. Venga, sofoca La Habana. Venga, sofoca La Habana. Tira para adelante, no te detengas. Camina que yo te sigo. Coge la cosa como venga, La Habana quiere guarachar contigo. Tira para adelante, no te detengas. Camina que yo te sigo. Coge la cosa como venga, La Habana quiere guarachar contigo.
Is that the Democrats cooking my head?
Solo me alienta el deseo divino de hacerte mía, más me destruye la incertidumbre que estoy pasando. Y es que la nieve cruel de los años mi cuerpo enfría, y se me agota ya la paciencia por ti esperando. Y se me agota ya la paciencia por ti esperando. Y a besos yo te levante al rayar el día, y que el idilio perdure siempre al llegar la noche. Mas cuando llegue la aurora llena de goce, se fundan en una sola tu alma y la mía. Y a besos yo te levante al rayar el día, y nos sorprenda que el idilio perdure siempre al llegar la noche. Sea solo para cuando llegue la aurora llena de goce, solo tú y yo se fundan en una sola tu alma y la mía. Tu alma y la mía. Y a besos yo te levante al rayar el día, y que el idilio perdure siempre al llegar la noche. Y cuando llegue la aurora llena de goce, se fundan en una sola tu alma y la mía. Que a besos yo te levante al rayar el día, y nos sorprenda que el idilio perdure siempre al llegar la noche. Sea solo para cuando llegue la aurora llena de goce, solo tú y yo se fundan en una sola tu alma y la mía. Se fundan en una sola tu alma y la mía. se cumpla nuestro idilio y que termine la espera, porque sin ti no es lo mismo, mi vida se ha vuelto un desastre, qué pena. Soñando contigo, oye contigo, queriendo que se cumpla nuestro idilio. Yo te voy a querer, tú has sido siempre mi estrella, te llevo siempre conmigo mi vida, porque tú eres la más bella. ¡Anda! ¡Pues dale!
I don't think so.
Soñando, siempre contigo, que se cumpla nuestro idilio. Para estar contigo yo quisiera ser el aire que tú respiras. Ay, no sabré cómo encontrar otra mujer, porque tú eres mi vida, mi vida. Soñando contigo, queriendo que se cumpla nuestro idilio. Con este idilio pasaría mi vida, la vida entera soñando voy, soñando va. Este hombre que te espera, te espera. Soñando siempre contigo, soñando siempre que vuelves y te quedas, soñando siempre contigo, queriéndote bajar la luna y las estrellas, soñando siempre contigo. Ay, qué manera de quererte, qué manera, soñando siempre contigo. Ay, qué manera de quererte, qué manera. Voy a hacerte una versión de las tantas que han habido. Dos mujeres, tres maridos, buscaban su ubicación. Dos mujeres, tres maridos, buscaban su ubicación. Quiero por los amores, dale tempa, se fue con tumba, dale tumba, escapó con tumba. Quiero por los amores, dale tempa, se fue con tumba, dale tumba, escapó con tumba. Así fue, un tremendo lío. La parejita de Tempa, al parecer aburrida, quiso hacer cambio
Mary's Motel. What a perfect day for a drive in the mountains. The roads are like super clear. The sky is clear. The sun is shining. It's been a while since I had a good day. They say it only takes one person to ruin your day. So I think I'm just going to try to avoid people today. I was thinking to try to find a Wi-Fi hotspot somewhere and post this on YouTube so I can keep track of everything, because if I put too many recordings on the dash cam, it's going to get confusing. Plus my phone is full of videos. Halifax Pier. Couple of years till the election anyways. I need to chill out, man. My daughter needs to go back to school. I was thinking it'd be nice if my daughter could go to school in Florida, like part-time Spanish. Because she already speaks Spanish. But it's kind of a little bit like it must be like very difficult for? Information science. There's a bison truck. Bye, son. Bye. Oh, he's Punjabi driving it. That's a push up there. I got watch it. Oh, it's the Tim Hortons. Oh, it's locked up. It's locked up. Chicka boom. Chicky boom. I didn't unplug the dash cam, I think. Make sure I don't lose all that. That was something, eh? Fuck. Was that me?
We don't know. Like, if you're driving in your car and someone cuts you off, you curse. Or at least I do. And it's often a situational issue rather than a personality flaw on the part of the other driver, even though it's easy to assume that. But you respond impulsively. I mean, God only knows how much of our social media networks are set up to differentially reward impulsive behavior. And it's also not that easy to hold people accountable in some sense. Maybe there's some utility to that, but with anonymous accounts.
Wow, what a
the
view.
anonymity is also problematic because it certainly enables people to allow their worst to manifest themselves, especially if they're resentful and angry.
Incredible view here.
The benefit that I can see to anonymity is it gives you the opportunity to explore controversial ideas without
True. I think
used correctly.
well, that's it. I think that's true. I think there's some utility. I mean, I don't think that it should be forbidden, but well, like most things, it has its advantages and its disadvantages.
Like most things, it's not entirely negative.
Hey, so I figured something out that I thought I'd tell you about. This took me like 30 years to figure out, and I figured it out on this tour. So there's this old idea, that you have to rescue your father from the belly of the whale, right? From some monster that's deep in the abyss. You see that Pinocchio, for example. It's a very common idea. And I figured out why that is, I think. So imagine that we already know from a clinical perspective that, if you set out a path towards a goal, which you want to do because you need a goal and you need a path, because that provides you with positive emotion, right? So you set up something as valuable. So that implies a hierarchy. You set up something as valuable. You decide that you're going to do that instead of other things. So that's kind of a sacrifice, because you're sacrificing everything else to pursue that. And then you experience a fair bit of positive emotion and meaning as you watch yourself move towards the goal. And so the implication of that is that the better the goal, the more full and rich your experience is going to be when you pursue it. So that's one of the reasons for developing a vision and for fleshing yourself out philosophically, because you want to aim at the highest goal that you can manage. Okay, so you do that, and then what you find is that as you move towards the goal, there are certain things that you have to accomplish that frighten you. Maybe you have to learn to be a better speaker, a better writer, a better thinker. You have to be better to people around you, or you have to learn some new skills, and you're afraid of that. Whatever, because it's going to stretch you if you pursue a goal, and so that will put you up against challenges. Okay, so all the clinical data indicates the opposite of safe spaces, as Jonathan Haidt has been pointing out, that what you want to do when you identify something that someone is avoiding, that they need to do because they're afraid, you have them voluntarily confront it. So you break it down. What you try to do, if you're a behavior therapist, is you break down the thing they're avoiding into smaller and smaller pieces until you find a piece that's small enough so they'll do it. And it doesn't really matter as long as they start it. Then they can put the next piece on and the next piece. And what happens is they don't get less afraid. Exactly, they get braver. It's like there's more of them. And here's why. So imagine you do something new, and that's informative, right? There's information in the action, and then you can incorporate that information and turn it into a skill and turn it into a transformation of your perceptions. So there's more to you because you've tried something new. So that's one thing. The second thing is, and there's good biological evidence for this now, that if you put yourself in a new situation, then new genes code for new proteins and build new neural structures and new nervous system structures. The same thing happens to some degree when you work out, right? Because your muscles are responding to the load, but your nervous system does that too. So you imagine that there's a lot of potential you locked in your genetic code. And then if you put yourself in a new situation, then the stress, the situation of stress that's produced by that particular situation unlocks those genes and then builds new parts of you. So that's very cool, because who knows how much there is locked inside of you. Okay, so now here's the idea. So let's assume that scales as you take on heavier and heavier loads. And more of you get more and more informed because you're doing more and more difficult things, but more and more of you gets unlocked. And so then what that would imply is that if you got to the point where you could look at the darkest things, so that would be the abyss, right? That would be the deepest abyss. If you could look at the harshest things, like the most brutal parts of the suffering of the world and the malevolence of people and society, if you could look at that straight and directly, that would turn you on maximally. And so that's the idea of rescuing your father, because imagine that you're like the potential composite of all the ancestral wisdom that's locked inside of you biologically. But that's not going to come out at all unless you stress yourself, unless you challenge yourself. And the bigger the challenge you take on, the more that's going to turn on. And so that as you take on a broader and broader range of challenges and you push yourself harder, then more and more of what you could be turns on, and that's equivalent to transforming yourself into the ancestral father, because you're like the, what would you call it? You're the consequence of all these living beings that have come before you. That's all part of your biological potentiality. And then if you can push yourself, then all of that kicks on, and that turns you into who you could be. That's the re-representation of that positive ancestral father. So that's why you rescue your father from the belly of the beast.
So you think that this ultimate goal of sacrifice and of risking your life in order to save someone who's truly important to you, that this somehow or another maximizes your potential as a human being?
Well, I think you can think about it religiously too. So if you think about it this way, so in the Christian story, for example, Christ does two things that are messianic. One is takes the suffering of the world onto himself, because that's the weird idea. Okay, so what does that mean? Let's think about it psychologically. Well, maybe it means that, well, that's your job, is the world's full of suffering, and you should accept that as your responsibility, past, present, and future. You're supposed to do something about that, and as much as you can about it. And maybe you start with your own localized suffering, put yourself together. But then you expand that outward, and you decide that you're not a victim of that, even though you're part and parcel of it, but you're the potential solution to that. And so you accept that as a responsibility. So that's part of taking on a load. That's part of bearing a cross. You could look at it that way. The cross is sort of a symbol of the place of maximal suffering. Okay, so you accept that as a challenge, not as something that you're victimized by. Maybe you accept that as the price of being. Okay, so that's one responsibility. You're responsible for addressing the suffering in the world. So that could give you some meaning, it seems to me. And then the next thing is, there's a story, of course, that Christ met the devil in the desert. And so that's the encounter with malevolence. So that would be the other thing, because the two major problems that people face, obviously, are suffering, tragedy, and malevolence. And so that's the other thing that you're responsible
That word, what's your
is
favorite
that you're
word,
supposed to look at the capacity for human evil
does that mean?
as clearly as you possibly can. It's a very terrifying thing. That causes post-traumatic stress disorder in people that aren't accustomed to it. And in the mythology that's associated with the encounter with evil, it's almost always the case that the entity that does the encountering, even if it does it voluntarily, is hurt by it. So the Egyptian god Horus, for example, was the eye and the falcon, the thing that can see and pay attention. When he encounters his evil uncle, Seth, who's the precursor of Satan, he loses an eye. Because it's no joke to encounter malevolence. It can really shake you. But the idea would be that if you can face that malevolence and you can face the suffering, then that opens the door to your maximum potential. And then the optimistic part of that is, and this is why it's so useful to peer into the darkness, let's say, the optimistic part of that is that although the suffering is great and the malevolence is deep, your capacity to transcend it is stronger. So what you get out of the most negative viewpoint is the most positive possible consequence. Because one of the things you'd like to know, if you wanted to know something deep about yourself, is that you can face the worst that there was and prevail. And I believe that's capable. I believe that people are capable of that. I think that despite how tragic life is and how malevolent things are, that fundamentally our spirit, let's say, has the capacity to confront that and to fix it, like psychologically, so to confront it courageously, to be able to bear up under that if you do it voluntarily, but also to address it. Not only to deal with it psychologically, but to deal with it practically. And then we can make things much better.
There's always a striving towards utopia, right? Like this is the ultimate goal. That if you ask people, what would you like out of civilization? Well, I'd like everyone to be happy and everyone to get along. There'd be no war, nothing, no suffering, nothing. But in order to really truly learn about yourself and about life, you have to overcome adversity. You have to experience things. And I firmly believe that in order to truly appreciate love, you have to understand and really have felt hate. And to really appreciate camaraderie, you have to feel loneliness. So this is just a part of being a person. For whatever reason,
Yeah, well, maybe, see, the other thing that I've been thinking along the same lines is that it isn't. So in the biblical stories, in the Abrahamic stories, for example, Abraham basically hangs around his dad's tent till he's like 80. He's one of these guys that fails to launch, in a big way, and God eventually gets sick and tired of him, like, playing video games in his basement, and says, "Get the hell out there into the world and have a life." And so he does. He leaves his father's tent, his community, and his country, which is what he's commanded to do. And then he goes out and has an adventure. But the first thing he encounters is a famine, and then he encounters a tyranny, and then he encounters a bunch of people in the tyrannical state that want to take his wife. And so you can imagine that Abraham's response to that is like, it was a hell of a lot better sitting in my dad's tent playing video games. But what's cool about that story, what I realized when I was doing the lectures on it last year, was that was a call to adventure. And that the right way of conceptualizing what we're talking about isn't that utopia would be a place where everyone was happy. Because and I think because of what you just laid out is you need that polarity, and people need a load, and we need adversity, and we need difficulty. We need all of that. So maybe what you want is an adventure, the greatest adventure that you could have. And that would involve, something to push against. It would involve real challenge. And so just see, Dostoevsky knew this, because when he wrote Notes from Underground, which I would highly recommend to everyone who's listening, it's a great book and it's a very short book. He criticized socialist utopia back in like 1860, way before it became the sort of widespread idea that it is now. And what Dostoevsky said was that, well, human beings are these very peculiar creatures, and if you gave us a utopia so that we had nothing to do but eat cake and busy ourselves with the continuation of the species, that was his line, that the first thing we do is smash it all to bits, just so that something unexpected and troublesome would happen, because we're built for adventure and not for peace and happiness.
Well, we're designed to overcome the natural world. The natural world is filled with that. The natural world is filled with things trying to eat things. And this is just everywhere you look, that's all you observe. You observe predators and prey and animals eating vegetables, and that's it. And I think that this concept of overcoming adversity is so human. It's so a part of what we are, that I want to bring it back to you, because one of the things that I've been considering is that I've said this many times, and I just had a conversation with my good friend Steve Vernella the other day where he brought it up independently. He said, I think Jordan Peterson is the most misunderstood and misinterpreted guy in the world. He's like, people are always like, not just misinterpreting, but misstating what you believe in, misstating what you say. This opposition to you, this, like we were talking about this GQ interview, which I thought was, I thought that woman was far more intelligent than and her approach was far better and far more reasoned and well thought out than some of the other attacks on you before. So they're bringing in the varsity level players, is what I'm saying. It's like, but I think this is important. I think this is part of what forges this message, is that you are, and and this is one of the things that Eric Weinstein and I had said about you, is that you're essentially the Hoist Gracie of the intellectual dark web. If you don't know what that means, it's the early days of the UFC. No one knew what the best martial art was, and the idea was like there was all these martial arts that are running around independently, and they were all claiming that they had the best technique, and let's see what happens. And Hoist Gracie was the one who represented jiu-jitsu and went out there and beat all these people with superior technique and superior strategy.
South American?
Yes, he's from Brazil.
Brazil, yeah, okay, I know about him, yeah.
And he launched this Brazilian, and his family launched this Brazilian jiu-jitsu empire that has since taken over the world of martial arts. But you are the one who's consistently engaging these people. You're the one who's involved in these Vale Tudo events where you're debating these people who are coming at you hostile, with notes. And I think as uncomfortable as those moments are, like, who was the woman that said, so what you're trying to say is...
Yeah, Kathy Newman.
Yeah, I think her approach... I think she misunderestimated you. I think she underestimated you. I think she misinterpreted who you are, and she thought that she could come at you with this straw man sort of article and... argument rather and frame your positions in a very unflattering way. It just didn't work.
No.
It was like the early days of hoisters. Guys would come at them flailing and he'd get them in an arm bar and they'd tap out and they'd go, fuck. That's kind of what happened with you. But now this woman who you had this conversation with in GQ, she was much more skilled.
Yeah.
She was better verbally.
Yeah.
Her arguments made more sense.
Yeah.
She seemed more reasonable, more well-read.
Yeah.
She was able to think on her feet quicker. But still, these are really important conversations.
Well, it was a funny day because I went to the hotel room in Baltimore, and I went out of my way to do it, and she was hostile to me the second I walked into the room.
Really?
Yes, and that really kind of put me off.
How so?
Well, she basically told me that we were going to have a war, not so many words, but just there was a coldness to her and a distaste for me that was sort of radiating from her. So she was animus possessed from a Jungian perspective. That's the right way of thinking about it. One of the ways of thinking about that is that she had a chip on her shoulder in relationship to me. So she'd already formulated who I was in her imagination.
Right.
And it was also maybe a form of projection. So like I was the embodiment of all the things that she found distasteful. And that's who she was. So there was no willingness to consider on her part that I could be different than her preconceptions of me, right? And so she was hostile to me in the way that you would be if you were prejudiced against someone right from the beginning. And so by the time it was uncomfortable in the room, and by the time and there was a photo shoot, and so by the time the conversation started, I was more impatient than I would normally be, because one of the things that I do expect from journalists, and Kathy Newman was like this, by the way, and so some of the other people that have gone after me, at least they had the professionalism to be civil before the interview started.
Right.
Because there's a certain amount of politeness, I would say, that not that I'm owed, but that someone you're interviewing is owed if they come out of their way to go talk to you.
It's just human decency.
Yes.
There's no real conflict, right? Until you have this conflict, it's just hello, nice to meet you.
Yeah, thank you for coming.
Two human beings interacting with each other.
Yes, on relatively professional.
Yes.
Well, even just professional, right? Even just professional grounds. It's like, well, we're both here to do a job, and I've agreed to come, but no, there was palpable enmity in the air right to begin with. And when I actually thought at the end of that interview, I thought, geez, maybe I've done enough interviews, because I found that I was more impatient than I would have liked to have been. Now, luckily, it doesn't seem to have gone overboard. I've been watching the comments on that GQ interview, and I think it's got about 4.5 million views, some ridiculous number of views. And people have said that I was more impatient and a little harsher than usual, which I think is true. And I thought, maybe I'm starting to run out of patience, which isn't good, right? I don't want to run out of patience.
Because then it will flavor the message that you're putting out.
Definitely.
And people will take it in the wrong way, and they'll take it in with that bitterness.
Yes, exactly. And one of the things that I think is very important is that you don't become resentful. When I'm on this tour, for example, there's no resentment for me, because you think, well, you might think, well, this is not cool, I'm not like that. And it takes a lot of organization, it's quite demanding and all of that, and that's all true. None of that is a complaint. And I decided with Tammy right at the beginning that, first of all, that this was going to be work on vacation, because we're not stupid. We know you can't have everything at the same time if you have any sense. You're lucky if you get some things that are good at once, So we're very grateful to have that opportunity. And that I was going to continue to do this as long as I was thrilled to be in front of the audience, and then when I meet people afterwards, that I'm not looking at the end of the line to see when the night ends, because I want to be sure that every single person that comes to meet me, I'm, present for. Absolutely, because I am actually quite taken aback and thrilled, I guess is the right word. Grateful, that's better, that they're there. It's like, God, man, some of these people, they're coming from all over the place. People flying from Australia to Europe. They've flown. Lots of Eastern Europeans came to England. They're making huge treks. There was guys who came from like 8. It took them like 12 hours to get through Russia and come to Finland to watch the talk there. You know, and then not just a few people like that. People are really going way the hell out of their way. You know, and then they line up. It's not inexpensive because these venues are expensive and all of that. And I'm doing, and it's the same with the damn interviews. It's like I'm doing my best to not take any of this for granted and not get annoyed about it. And that goes for the conflict too. It's like, well, you know, I've tried to have my agent screen out maybe the more egregious interviews, you know, the ones that would just be nothing but club that, because I find them quite stressful. Though I wouldn't say I'm hiding from them. But you don't know to begin with how an interview is going to go, and I can just say, well, I've been having interviews for a while. But I can't help but see that the conflict is a necessary part of this, even though I don't find it pleasant. Like people think, they accuse me of being a provocateur of enjoying the conflict. It's actually not true at all. I don't enjoy it at all. It usually takes me about 3 days to recover from from a particularly contentious interview. You know, because I find conflict, interpersonal conflict, quite stressful.
Yes.
You know, but I think
to pretend you don't, you're either a sociopath or you're a liar.
yes. Well, there are people who seem to enjoy that kind of intellectual combat. You know, and the political types are more like that. But
I think they still afterwards feel it, and if they read the comments and people are against them, unease and hate carries.
well, you would think so. I mean, now I don't even know how people deal with it because I've been fortunate because although I've had a fair bit of negative press coverage, the comments on YouTube in particular, which is where the bulk of them are, and I would say among the general public, have been overwhelmingly positive. I don't know what the hell it would be like to be in a world where that was reversed, where the majority of people are against you.
I've seen it happen with guests that I've done on the show where I've met them afterwards and you see a physical effect on them. You see their
Jesus
Christ, those comments are so mean, like you can't read those. You can't read those. And you see how it's affecting them. Like they can't sleep. They really, it fucks with them. They'll stay up for nights. You know, it's not good. It's you're taking in all of these opinions of hundreds, if not thousands, of people that you don't even know. You don't know if they're coming from a healthy place, and most of those opinions, they would not express it that way if they were talking.
Yeah,
even
right.
if they could get the same message across, like I think you were ignorant to these facts. I think you are biasing your perceptions. Even if they had an opinion that was unflattering, the way they'd express it to you, they'd be considerate about you and your feelings as a human being. And if they weren't, you wouldn't take into consideration what they're saying because this guy's just an asshole.
Yeah, right.
But when you just see it in type, you just see print. It just doesn't. It could be a smart person. It could be a psycho. It could be a fool. It could be anything.
Well,
it's
it's
just
also
words.
funny too because the negative comments that are part of social media seem to be just as potent as negative comments in real life, but the positive comments don't seem to be as positive as the positive comments in real life.
Yes.
They don't seem as real. And I guess that's partly because we're wired, to be more sensitive to threat and to negative emotion because we can be hurt.
Well, it's also healthy too to not stroke your ego too much. If you're just concentrating only on the like there's something distasteful if you go to someone's page and they just retweet all the positive things that people say to them, because then it has this sort of reinforcing side where people know that if I say something really positive to Jordan, he's going to retweet me. Like there are some people that they engage in this sort of commerce. Like you say something positive, they retweet you, and it's a little too strokey.
Right, right.
People get really into that, stroking their own back.
Yeah. Well, I guess the danger of that is that possibility of that ego inflation that you really want to avoid, because that's a bad idea.
Oh,
that's a very bad idea.
Well, you've done a wonderful job of avoiding those waters, because this is for a guy who's in his 50s, who becomes famous out of nowhere, and doesn't just become famous, but becomes this culturally significant sort of lightning rod. I mean, that's how I view you and a lot of these talks that you're doing, a lot of these these debates like you're having with this woman at GQ or some of your interviews, what you're doing is you're expressing yourself in a brave but very controversial way, and a lot of people are paying attention to this, but then you're backing it up with your research, you're backing it up with real science, you're backing up with a tremendous amount of history of the human race and of religion and of the scientific studies that have been done that show correlations between different types of behaviors in human beings, and all this is rich. It's very rewarding if you can take it all in. But when it goes against what people have, their preconceived notions or their own set of beliefs that they're bringing to your conversations,
20 years ago,
then it creates this hostile
I witnessed a fucking
battle
chat.
where what you're saying is very contrary to what the way they've been living their life, or these preset patterns of behavior.
Really saw that in Scandinavia. Yeah, well, I was there. I went to Stockholm twice, and Oslo twice, and Helsinki twice, and Copenhagen once in the last month, and I spent quite a bit of, there was a lot of interviews, and a lot of discussion about the so-called gender paradox. That's a very interesting thing, because it's really put their tails.
Ensuring that there is such a high emphasis placed on equality, that you have the equal amount of men, the equal amount of women, and the opportunities are absolutely available as much to women as they are to men. This is enforced. That this creates an environment where there's less resistance. Now, an environment where there's less resistance, perhaps women don't feel as compelled to say, "I'll show you."
Yeah. That is what seems to happen.
This is
well, here's an example. So there are fewer women mathematicians in the higher echelons. Okay, but here's something interesting about mathematical ability. First of all, it's very rare, so that's the first thing to keep in mind. Now, it looks like, if you look in junior high, that mathematically gifted men and males and females are approximately as common. Now, there's a little bit of debate about that, because there is some evidence that maybe at the very upper extremes there's a male advantage, just like there's a male disadvantage at the low end, because the male distribution for intelligence might be flatter. And so that's the greater male variability hypothesis. There's been papers putting that forward that have been retracted as a consequence of pressure from politically correct people, even though greater male variability is actually quite common in the animal kingdom for a variety of reasons. Men are more expendable, that males are more expendable in some ways, or you could say that males are more likely to pursue high-risk, high-return strategies. You can look at it either way, and it's certainly possible. In any case, the males in junior high who happen to be mathematically gifted are less likely to also be verbally gifted, whereas that doesn't seem to be the case for the females. And so if you're a male math nerd, then math is a pretty logical pathway for you, because you don't have as many other options. Whereas if you're female math nerd, you have other options, because you're more likely to also be verbally gifted. And so that's enough to, at least in principle, account for some of the reason why there are fewer women mathematicians than men mathematicians.
They have other options.
They have other options. There's lots of complex reasons like this. And so we have this reflexive idea, and this is very much the case, because this is like the core idea among the feminist neo-Marxist types, is that if there's differences in outcome, that's proof of prejudice, and that's support for the idea of the patriarchal tyranny. And that's like the core axiom of the radical left, is the patriarchal tyranny, as far as I'm concerned. That's God for them, the patriarchal tyranny. It's like, well, if it turns out that many of these differences in outcome between men and women aren't a consequence of the patriarchal tyranny, in fact, even get bigger when you reduce the tyrannical aspect of the patriarch and even the patriarchal aspect to it, then it makes that theory not only wrong, but opposite of the truth, which is the worst kind of wrong. And so, if men are more likely to pursue careers in the STEM fields, which seems to be the case, under conditions of optimal freedom for men and women, then that's going to drive income disparities, because the STEM fields pay more. And they pay more partly because they're scalable. Like, it's really hard to scale care for people. Like if you work in a daycare, you're going to care for 3 infants. You're not going to care for 50, because you can't. It's not scalable. But if you're like a software designer, it's infinitely scalable. And so there's a much wider range of possibility for generating much larger much larger income pools and much larger pools of wealth. And men are also more likely to work longer hours. And if you work 10% longer hours, you make 40% more money. There's a non-linear return on. That's a good thing for everybody who's listening to know. If you have a job, you want to be the guy or the woman who's working that extra 10%, because the return on that is non-linear. So that's a really useful thing to know. Men are more likely to work outside. They're more likely to work in dangerous businesses. They're more likely to run full-time businesses rather than part-time businesses. And they're more likely to move in pursuit of their career goals. And that all contributes to differences in, and in among Uber drivers, they make 7% more money because they drive faster. So anyway,
That's not good though.
Well, no, but it's a high risk. It's a high risk, high return issue, right?
It's a pattern male.
It's more risk. There's more risk in it, so there's more return as long as you don't get hurt.
Right.
And I think that's a pretty common male pattern. Is there's more risk, there's more return as long as you don't get hurt.
The problem seems to be when discussing these things, in any way romanticizing or glorifying male behavior, or putting any emphasis whatsoever on there being a positive aspect to a lot of the things that we think of as being like aggression or ambition or competition.
Well,
the competition amongst men is fine. Competition with men against women is often thought as cruel.
And there's a certain amount of reason for that as well, because obviously physical competition it's easy for that to border on cruel.
This is why we were talking before the show that instead of calling people men and women when referring to because there's this very disturbing, in my opinion,
heaven meets hell.
Women entering into these competitions now with women.
There's a big house.
Female and dominating. And that instead of calling people men and women, let's dispense with that.
You can be a man or a woman.
Just say it is.
You can be a man or a woman. That's your choice, and you can change it whenever you want. So you're a man or a woman, and that's your choice.
Almost all.
We're going to have a new rule, which is that if you have an XY chromosome, so you're an XY person or an XX person, then if you're an XY person, you don't get to engage in physical combat with an XY person.
Yes.
Men or women.
XX
Doesn't matter.
Yes.
How would that?
If you're XY, you can't engage in physical combat with XX.
That's right. XYs cannot hit XXs. How's that? And maybe they can't run in running contests against them. And maybe they can't play tennis against them. Not within. And maybe that's just reasonable.
It is reasonable.
Yes, it is certainly reasonable.
It is reasonable, but if you talk about that, especially someone like you, you were against this bill that was going to enforce these pronouns and the compelling the use of these pronouns, that you're thought to be a transphobic person because you feel like there maybe should be some rational discussion about the physical limitations of certain body structures, because that's what it is. If you're talking about my field of business, you're talking about combat sports.
Right.
I've been involved in combat sports my whole life, and there is a difference. And it's not to say that females aren't competent. And I mean, I had Miriam Nakamoto on yesterday. She's a good friend of mine. She's an 8-time world Muay Thai champion. She's a monster. But she doesn't fight against men, and she shouldn't fight against men, although she probably could beat a bunch of them.
Right.
It's not. She shouldn't have to.
A tough woman can beat a variety of men.
Oh, yes.
But a really tough man can beat all women.
Yes.
Right. So that's the problem.
That's the reality.
Yes, that is definitely
There's
the
just,
reality.
and people don't like to hear these things, and they want to pretend that you can even out the playing field with hormones. No, you can even at a little. There's certain things like
tourists.
You gave Brock Lesnar a sex change and put him in a dress. He's going to run through every woman that's ever lived in the history of women. There's not a
tourist henchmen, government henchmen.
That mind that guy has had with testosterone pumping through it.
See these two
it's just
pickup trucks. See the way he's putting his brakes on the left. It's like stop. They always look so threatening too.
You want to have to do it in chess? You want to have to do it in something that's non-physical? Sure. You want them to be a woman? Yes.
Government henchmen.
Well, sure. But as soon as you're compelling people, here's one that's coming up lately. If you don't want to date a trans woman, then
they try to give me the license plate thing again. I just not.
You want a family.
not doing that anymore.
Huxley's book, it was considered immoral to reject anyone's sexual advances because it was prejudicial. And the thing is, it is prejudicial. That's the thing. Now,
Fascist
so that
cowards.
makes the question even more interesting, because the question is, at what point do you have the right to your prejudices?
Right.
And one of the things that we seem to cling to, and I would say rightly, is that we're allowed to be prejudiced when it comes to who we interact with sexually, and who we choose as friends, and that's right. That's the right to association.
Oh, welcome to Alberta.
But only up to a certain point.
Well,
This is
Oh, good afternoon, Mr. Ken.
Logic is kind of leaking into sexual preference now. Like if you have a problem with someone being overweight, then you're a sizeist or something.
Yeah.
Like that. Like what is that?
Well, the thing is that you can't have preferences without having prejudices.
Of course.
Right. And so that's a big issue. So what does that mean? You don't get to have